Welcome, everybody. This is another in a series of chats, conversations that the International Dialogue Initiative is hosting with and among members and others during the COVID-19 pandemic to check in and see how things are going in other parts of the world and what people are experiencing. My name is David Fromm. I'm a member of the IDI. The IDI, for those of you who don't know much about it, it's a multidisciplinary private group of psychologists, politicians, lawyers, activists who study the psychopolitical aspects of conflict, especially looking at large group identity. And today we're talking with Hiba Husseini, who's an attorney in Ramallah. She's the managing partner of Husseini & Husseini, which is a law firm that's been serving the needs of the Palestinians for over 100 years, doing everything from real estate conveyances to litigation, arbitration. She's also a member of the IDI, and we're working on getting her video feed hooked up, but until we can get that hooked up, we're gonna just talk. So Hiba, welcome. And first question is, how are you?
Thank you, David. I'm doing well. Things are okay, I suppose. It was a little bit difficult early on to get adjusted, but slowly I found ways to get used to the new normal, if you will, until this corona pandemic leaves us and allows us all to heal. So all in all, things are stable right now. I'm back at work. I'm back in my office. Early on, like everybody else around the world, I was working from home. And it was, again, as I said, a bit difficult to adjust early on because we weren't sure how long it will be, how dangerous COVID-19 really is. So there was a lot of apprehension, anticipation, uncertainty, discomfort. But now things are a bit better.
I'm glad to hear it. Obviously, through the magic of the internet, through Zoom, I'm in Western Massachusetts working from home. You may hear my dog bark in the background. I gave him a bone, but I think he's demolished it already. Hiba is in Ramallah. Now, Hiba, there were formal lockdowns, right?
Yes, I should also point out that I live in Jerusalem and I commute to Ramallah, so that added the commuting difficulty and the lockdown, because Israel locked down at a different pace than the Palestinian government did. So I was caught in between two jurisdictions and two different sets of rules, if you will. The first lockdown happened in Palestine very early on, because late February, during the last week of February, and for the record, I should say February 2020, we had an outbreak in the Bethlehem area from tourists coming in from Europe. So they were infected and they passed the virus on to Palestinians who were working with them and at the hotel and their bus driver. So early on, like around 24th of February, the Palestinian government started the lockdown. And that included all cities of the West Bank as well. So I could not get to Ramallah, to my office, effective March 1st.
So Ramallah was locked down before East Jerusalem was locked down.
Yes, exactly. So I was home. I managed to get to the office to get some files, to activate my remote access and get some files. But that was like, in the so-called very difficult hours they allowed us, because it was really almost curfew, near curfew in the West Bank. But East Jerusalem was all open, and Israel had not taken the decision quite yet to go through a lockdown.
I was reading just recently, this is obviously the end of Ramadan, and this weekend is Eid, and that there's a concern that folks laborers, folks who are working in Israel, who might be coming home for the holidays, might be the source of new outbreaks. Is that something you're hearing?
That's certainly true, because what happened also in the early stages of the spread of the virus, aside from the international tourists that were visiting Bethlehem, Palestine has a very large number hundreds of thousands of Palestinian day laborers working in Israel, and they commute daily. Before Israel decided to lock down, the Palestinian workers were carriers, and they were infected. So they were infecting their families when they returned home in the evening or over the weekends. And we are worried that something similar might happen this time around as well, yes. So during the holiday, during the Ramadan holiday, effective Saturday, for 3 consecutive days, there will be a curfew in the West Bank. So unfortunately, people cannot do the usual family visits, nor the prayers at the mall. It's been a very difficult Ramadan as well, because Ramadan is a festive period. I mean, it's a religious holiday, of course, but in the evening, you get to visit, to have your breakfast with the family. You also you do your prayers, extensive prayers during the evenings at mosques. So all gatherings, you couldn't do that anymore because obviously everybody had to observe social distancing.
Are the mosques open?
No. People are praying at home.
I was reading somewhere that despite the virus, that Gaza and the West Bank have had relatively few cases, and that the cases have been declining quite a bit lately.
Yes, our curve is a very promising curve, and the West Bank, as I said, the cases we had from the tourists early on, very few, I think no more than 10, and they're all recovered. The families that were infected from the virus were from the workers, the day laborers in Israel, also around probably 200 or so, and they've except though we have had 2 deaths as a result. And then there were some cases, I think no more than 5 actually, that came to Palestine from airports and traveling through Jordan, because Palestinians have access to the Jordanian airports, and they were returning home, and they brought back with them the virus. Aside from that, the number of cases is less than 400. The recovered is almost 2/3 of that. I think we have no more than 50 active cases and 2 deaths only. Amazing. We had the lockdown very early on, and the other thing that the government did, which was very, very smart, if there were a case, for example, like let's say in Bethlehem, and so they locked down Bethlehem completely and totally and fully until they recovered or were treated, or isolated, not recovered, were isolated and then were put through the recovery stage. If you had an infected person who did not maintain social distancing with his family, and they were able to do the test and find out who was infected, they isolated that village. So they were able to isolate locations and localities, and they reduced considerably the travel between the different districts and municipalities. So people were not mixing. One of the reasons we were doing this early on is because we knew we didn't have the capacity. We did not have the capacity at hospitals. We didn't have capacity for ventilators. We didn't have the gear early on, the personal equipment. So it was preventive measures, knowing that we did not have the medical capacity to attend to a very, very large number of people who might be getting infected.
It sounds like the opposite approach of what's happened here in the United States, actually.
Totally.
We waited until it was everywhere, and then began to hustle to create ventilators and things like that.
Yeah, I watched the news, and it's very, very sad what's going on in the US. But yeah, I mean, the total opposite, yeah.
What's the sense, I mean, is, here in the United States, it feels like our political leaders are using the coronavirus as a way to further divide the people, and the sense of any kind of large group identity involving being an American is not really taking hold. Do you feel, at least, that the virus is having an effect on the sense of Palestinians as a unit, or is there anything going on that suggests that because the virus is an equal opportunity infector, that it's creating common cause with Israelis?
No, well, I mean, this is a difficult issue because of the politics. Among Palestinians in the West Bank, it's very community-based, and everybody's looking out for each other. So the identity is that we're all going, if we're not in this together, we might all be infected and going to be a disaster and dangerous, and we will have loss of life. So among the Palestinians, you see a lot of cohesion, and people have actually volunteered to help and distribute food and collect supplies and what have you. So it's been a very, very positive experience. We have a delicate balance to strike with Israel, being our neighbor with such close proximity on two levels. Level number one is that you have the East Jerusalem residents who are Palestinians, and then you have the Palestinians with a West Bank ID or residency per status who live in Area C. Those two areas created very different treatments and reactions. Israel focused heavily on treating or attending to the citizens of Israel, not the East Jerusalem residents, for a long time in the early stages of pandemic, because also the Palestinian government does not have any control over East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem was left kind of hanging and lingering to its own destiny. No equipment, no ventilators, no testing, no treatment, no lockdown, no nothing. Until the people, the East Jerusalem residents, started taking things in their own hands. And volunteers started forming and isolating the neighborhood with blocks, literally cement blocks of their own. That kind of sent a very, very strong message to the Israeli side that they have to deal with East Jerusalem on equal footing as they are dealing with the Israelis. Remember, East Jerusalem residents, we have residency in Israel, so we fall under Israeli law 100%, and we are treated in Israeli hospitals. So it was a very late decision by the Israeli government to attend to East Jerusalem.
Was it also the case, just to ask a question on that, that the Israelis were reluctant to allow certain supplies to be delivered to East Jerusalem hospitals because there were concerns that somehow that would be undermining Israeli authority?
No, because East Jerusalem hospitals fall under the jurisdiction of Israel. So the Palestinian government wanted to give equipment because eventually a large number of equipment was donated by China and other countries to Palestine. So the Palestinian government wanted to share some of that with the East Jerusalem hospitals, and indeed Israel said no. So that kind of created a problem. And then eventually Israel started to support to some extent. They opened one testing center in East Jerusalem. And you're talking about 400,000 residents of Jerusalem and Area C. In Area C, it was even worse for Palestinian residents there, because Area C are seam-line areas that are not in Israel proper nor in Palestine proper. And they're very, very, very populated, very heavily populated. And most of the refugee camps, the Palestinian refugee camps, are in Area C. So that created a special problem. There, Israel prevented the Palestinian government from doing any kind of testing, having any kind of presence. And actually, the Israeli police and military, were preventing Palestinian health workers and providing testing and medical services to the residents of Area C. So most of the cases in Palestine, believe it or not, that I refer to are in Area C. That became very political.
What about the Palestinians in Gaza? Are they doing okay?
Yes, the Palestinians in Gaza are doing okay because they are under a very, very strict lockdown. That's the political lockdown and seizure of the Gaza Strip by the Israeli government for years now. And their movement is very limited. The only people who could go, the only way, that people move in and out of Gaza is through Egypt, the border with Egypt. It's a land border called Rafah. And early on, the Egyptian government and the Gaza Authority established controls for the crossings there. It's a limited number of cases, and equipment, ventilators, and so forth were permitted to go to Gaza. I think they don't have more than 10 or 15 cases, if I recall.
That's remarkable. In a population of what, 2 million?
2 million, and in a very small area, in an area of 350 square kilometers. That's very, very, very tiny. And we were very worried. Again, very populated, very dense, impossible to separate people and create social distancing. Gaza has been, I should say, very fortunate that the situation has been under control.
So in Israel, the pandemic played a role, at least, in the decision to form kind of not a coalition government, but a power sharing agreement between Netanyahu and Gantz. Do you want to offer any thoughts on that, or you want to hold off?
Well, probably hold off. I mean, I have not followed a lot of the Israeli politics lately, so I'm not an authority to comment. In a way, it's good they reached a compromise. It's certainly not a compromise that plays well into the hands of the Palestinians or the politics, especially because Netanyahu is using the current situation and the pandemic, the corona pandemic, as a political tool against the Palestinians, and now he's annexing the West Bank, parts of the West Bank, the Jordan Valley. So this has been very, very difficult for us. So any kind of balance that we were hoping would come through Gantz becoming the prime minister, or a shift in Israeli discourse, opening the door, giving us an opportunity to at least have a discussion, resume sort of a coordination, a cooperation and discussions, is evaporating. And instead, Netanyahu is coming down hard with the plans to annex those. And they've started, of course, being supported completely by the Trump administration, President Trump himself, and the American ambassador to Israel.
Yes, it is it's a difficult time in the U.S. as you can perhaps imagine. How about you? We'll come back around towards the end of our conversation to you're an avid outdoors person, yoga and swimming. Are you able to get exercise?
Oh, you're hitting a raw nerve. I have been slowed down completely. My gym could shut down, obviously. So I do a little bit of yoga at home, some stretching, and because I also couldn't walk around early on. We were not allowed to walk, and we would get a fine if we were to walk outdoors. Now things are relaxed a little bit. So, but no, I'm doing maintenance, and unfortunately I can't do my vigorous workouts. No swimming, of course. I don't have a swimming pool at home.
My daughter loves to swim, and she's been doing research on the internet to figure out whether chlorine or salt water would kill the virus, so that she can go jump in a pool.
And what did she find out?
Well, I wouldn't go by her. She wants to reach a conclusion. She wants to get to yes. So I think she's found things that say that chlorine is fine, but of course it's the locker rooms and the floor of the pool skirts and all those things.
Actually, that's what it is. In fact, as much as I love swimming, and I would love to get the yes as well, and find a way to get back to the pool. Early on, I stopped swimming, even though the gym was open. I think from the outset, I did not get to the pool.
Well, hopefully someday soon you'll get back. We'll all get back. I've been riding my bike in the morning. It seems like one of the only things you can do that both gets you some fresh air and exercise, and also takes your mind off of the worries of the world.
Indeed, I hope, because we need a distraction from this pandemic. Life's come to a standstill to some extent, not to mention the impact on business and the practice. So it has had an impact on so many levels.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping that we'll get to see you at some point in the next 6 months, although who knows. But I'm very, very happy to hear that you're doing well and are healthy and are still in good spirits.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I do hope to see everyone soon, and I hope we can travel again. I am in good spirits, and I keep the energy going. My voice is fading is because I'm thirsty, because I'm fasting.
Right. Yeah. Right. You've got it's what, 5 o'clock there?
It's 5 o'clock. Yeah, we have
Okay.
2.5 hours left. Yeah,
Oh,
and then
goodness.
we've had. I mean, I think the most difficult thing has been the last week is we've had a heat wave of incredible hot temperatures. We went from 22, 24 Celsius to 36 and 38. I mean, literally overnight. And it's been 10 days of a heat wave and in May, I mean, we've never had this kind of, it's 12 to 14 degrees above normal.
That's ominous. We've had lower than normal temperatures here. We had, I think we had snow last weekend. Who knows what's going on?
Who knows? Who knows what's going on?
All we can do is stay connected.
Indeed, indeed. And I appreciate this opportunity, and I appreciate the connection. And I'm sorry, I'm still not there. We're figuring out how to get the video going or the camera going.
Yeah. At some point we'll do that. So I'm going to end the recording because my son, believe it or not, is doing his trombone lesson, and he's about to start. So you would be hearing some trombone playing. But it was wonderful to talk to you, Hiba. I'm so thrilled to talk to you, and I'm so glad to hear that you're doing okay.
Thank you. You too. I'm glad. I didn't ask about you, so we'll do it next time, maybe. Excellent. Thank you.
Stay safe, Hiba. Happy Eid.
Thank you very much. Shukran. Shukran.